We have been in a series, we've been in a series called Witnesses. And in this series, we've been walking through the book of Acts. And tonight is the last night of this series. Yes, last night of the series. We've made it to the very end. The end of the book of Acts. So we'll hit some of it. We may hit all of it. It's tragic in some ways, and in other ways, I was wondering if I was wondering if I was maybe wrong about the number of chapters in the book of Acts, because it was beginning to feel as if there might have been like an additional 15 chapters that slid in there while I wasn't looking, and I wasn't sure that that this series would ever have an opportunity to come to its rightful conclusion. Not that I don't enjoy the book of Acts. I do. There's just so much more Bible for us to get to. So we have been in this series. I don't even know how long it has been that we've been in this series, but here we are. Last week, we were in Acts chapter 25, and we got to see Paul flex on some folks just a little bit. He was a Roman citizen, and the Jews in Jerusalem were trying to bring him up on some false charges, and they persisted, and he pulled out his citizenship card. He showed his papers. He's like, I'm a citizen of Rome. You got to send me to see Caesar. Y'all try it. Better luck next time. Send me to Caesar. And so he gets to go to Rome, like he said he was going to go. Then in chapter 26, because we're jumping ahead, we're going all the way. Tonight we're going to be in Acts chapter 28, but just want to fill you in on what happened. Acts chapter 26. Paul tells King Agrippa that of his coming to Jesus story. We all have a coming to Jesus story. If we have come to Jesus, not to assume that everyone has, but we all have our story of how we got to this place where we're at now. And he shares his whole story with King Agrippa. And just for some historical reference, King Agrippa, his full name was Herod Agrippa II. Now, Herod is a name that gets used a whole lot in the first 4 books of the New Testament. And so it can get a little bit confusing. So Herod Agrippa II is the son of Herod Agrippa I. It's math that maths. Herod Agrippa I is the one in Acts chapter 12 who had James put to death. The apostle James was martyred, and he had Peter thrown in jail. That was Agrippa's daddy and them. Now, Agrippa in Acts 26, his great-grandfather was Herod the Great. Herod the Great died in 4 BC or BCE, before the Common Era. And for those of you who haven't heard me say it before, the reason I say Common Era and before the Common Era is because Jesus was not actually born in the year 0. Well, there is no year 0, but he was not born in 1 BC or AD, whichever. He wasn't born then. It was more like between 7 and 4 AD, or excuse me, 7 and 4 BCE. So that calendar, the years, like we count them wrong. Oddly enough, I believe it is in Ethiopia where they are 7 years. The year that they are in is like 7 years behind where we are. Do with that what you will. It's not what we're talking about. But Herod the Great is the one who tried to kill Jesus, to kill baby Jesus. Herod the Great, he's the one at the beginning of Matthew, I think Matthew chapter 2, he's the one who was like, what, a king? Not on my watch. And he says, kill all the babies in Jerusalem. And Jesus gets away, obviously, because now we have Paul, who is a follower of Jesus, after the death, burial, resurrection, and ascension of Jesus. So Jesus made it past the first Herod, and now his great grandson is involved here in Acts chapter 26. And Agrippa, the great grandson of the king who tried to kill baby Jesus, he is actually intrigued. Like, he hears Paul's story, and he's like, I don't know. I think if we sat here long enough, you trying to make me a Christian? Is that what you're trying to do? And Paul said, I wish for you to have everything I have except these chains, pointing to like the actual chain. He was chained up because he had been arrested. So I wish that you have everything that I have except these chains. A little tongue in cheek there for the Apostle Paul. And he says, Agrippa, I just want to dig in here because we're not going to spend any time here, but I want to tell you what happens. Agrippa says to Festus, remember Festus was the governor whom Paul went before in Caesarea. And Agrippa says to Festus, like, I would let him go. Like, they ain't got no charges to hold him on. But he said he wanted to go to see Caesar. And since that word's already put out there, like, I can't. Caesar's going to be expecting him. So otherwise, I'd have let him go. It was God's will for Paul to get to where he got to, even though them charges were false. In chapter 27, Paul gets put on a ship to Rome. He's finally making his voyage to Rome. And he gets to have some friends go with him. So when you read Acts 27, you'll see that the author, the writer of Acts says we were on the ship. I thought it was just Paul. No, it was we. And you go down and some other people who are with him. So Paul was allowed to bring some people with him. Like imagine like you on the bus to Rikers. And I say the bus to Rikers because I've watched too much Law and Order, but imagine you on the bus to Rikers and some of your friends can go with you so that you're not by yourself. That's sort of, not exactly, but that's sort of the situation that Paul had. Luke was with him, who was writing this, and some others were with him as well. There's a storm. The ship goes down. It runs aground on an island. This island called Malta. And that brings us to where we're going to be. Now, that story is one of my favorites in Acts chapter 27, about how they end up at Malta and the stuff that Paul says, and it's all super poetic and all this stuff. I love it. But we're not talking about that tonight. They're in Malta, and that's where we begin. Acts chapter 27. I'm in my ESV tonight. I'm going to read for you verses 1 through 10. And yeah, I'm going to read for you verses 1 through 10, and then we're going to walk through the text together. So Acts chapter 28, if you don't have an analog Bible, let us know and we'll send you an analog Bible. And that's for anybody who is watching this on Instagram, or happens to be watching this like months later on YouTube, or it could be next week. I don't know when, but whenever it is, if you need a Bible, just hit us up and let us know, and we will get you like an analog Bible. Acts chapter 28, verses 1 through 10. I'm reading from the ESV. It says, after we were brought safely through, we then learned that the island was called Malta. The native people showed us unusual kindness, for they kindled a fire and welcomed us all because it had begun to rain and was cold. When Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and put them on the fire, a viper came out because of the heat and fastened on his hand. When the native people saw the creature hanging from his hand, they said to one another, "No doubt this man is a murderer. Though he has escaped from the sea, justice has not allowed him to live." He, however, shook off the creature into the fire and suffered no harm. They were waiting for him to swell up or suddenly fall down dead. But when they had waited a long time and saw no misfortune come to him, they changed their minds and said that he was a god. Now, in the neighborhood of that place were lands belonging to the chief man of the island, named Publius, who received us and entertained us hospitably for 3 days. It happened that the father of Publius lay sick with fever and dysentery, and Paul visited him and prayed and put his hands on him, and putting his hands on him, healed him. And when this had taken place, the rest of the people on the island who had diseases also came and were cured. They also honored us greatly. And when we were about to sail, they put on board whatever we needed. I just want to walk through a little bit of what happens here and point some things out that stand out to me as a kind of a conclusion for this Bible study series. Remember, this all starts in Acts chapter 1, verse 8. Before Jesus ascends to heaven, he tells his disciples, the 11, because Judas is no longer with them. He says, I want you to stay here in Jerusalem, and I'm going to send you my spirit. And when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, you will receive power. And you will be my witnesses here in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the ends of the earth. And that's exactly what happens. That is the beginning, sort of the beginning. After the Gospels, that's the beginning of how we get here with Paul and some others on the island of Malta, shipwrecked while on their way to Rome. Now remember, Paul said, I'm going to Rome. And he was so convinced that he was going to Rome that he wrote the Christians in Rome a letter ahead of time telling them, if the Lord say the same and the creek don't rise, I'm coming to Rome. And now here he is on his way to Rome, and the shipwrecks, and they're on this island called Malta, and the people there treat them kindly. That's what it says in verse 2. The people treated them with unusual kindness. And it was cold and it was raining, and they took care of them. The native people showed us unusual kindness, for they kindled a fire and welcomed us all because it had begun to rain and was cold. Now, this next part, Paul starts gathering some sticks. Paul is not one of those people, and neither should we be. Paul is not one of those people who stands off to the side and lets other people do all the work. Even though when you read chapter 27, you'll see this, Paul told them how to avoid getting shipwrecked, and they didn't listen. Then when they were about to get shipwrecked, he actually says, y'all should have listened to me, but you didn't listen to me. And so we're about to crash, or the ship's gonna go down. The ship goes down, but here he is, even though other people have shown kindness towards all of them, he himself is picking up sticks to put in the fire, to help build this fire. And I want to pull from here something that should be a part of our character as witnesses for Christ, as witnesses of Jesus. Part of our character is that we should always be looking for ways to serve. Even when others are serving us, we should always be looking for ways to serve. Here Paul is shipwrecked, and this ain't the first time. It's not even the second time. Like, at this point, Paul is used to being shipwrecked. It has happened to him so many times. Sometimes we are in situations in life where to others it looks disastrous, and it's like, no, I've been here before. I'll be fine. And people want to help us and want to lend us a hand, and they do. Part of our gratitude should be, rather than just sitting around and being served, rather than just sitting around and letting others take care of us, not that there's something wrong with that in and of itself, but as witnesses, we should always be looking for opportunities to serve. Because see, that fire was not just for Paul. The fire wasn't just for Paul. The fire was also for Luke. It was also for his other travel companions, his travel buddies on the bus to Rikers. It was also for the other prisoners who were on their way to Rome. They were all in chains, but for different reasons. Like, Paul asked to be in those chains so that he could go and see Caesar. And there's the centurion, the guards, the Roman police officers or soldiers who are also shipwrecked with them. and it's their job to make sure that they get to Rome. This fire isn't just for Paul, it's for all of these people. And so by Paul choosing to serve in this moment, he is serving those who he is in chains with. We need to find and look for ways to serve at all times. You got to look for ways to serve at all times. Now, I want to go, let's see, so at the end of verse 3, a snake jumps out. A viper jumps out. Now, if you know anything about vipers, I don't know if you do or not. They're snakes, they're venomous. If you get bit by a viper, that's not a good thing. Categorically a bad thing. You'll probably die. It's a good chance. They're venomous. The snake jumps out, bites him, it's on his hand, and Paul's response, that's not till verse 5. It gets onto his hand, and immediately, verse 4, when the native people saw the creature hanging from his hand, they said to one another, "No doubt this man is a murderer. Though he has escaped the sea, justice has not allowed him to live." Now, I want to point something out here that I think happens to a lot of us. People see what we're going through, or maybe sometimes, because remember, we can't always be the hero in a story. Maybe sometimes we're the people of Malta, who we see people in a difficult circumstance. These people, these men had been shipwrecked. Their ship was done for. They weren't getting back on that ship. And they go and they help them out and they build them a fire to keep them warm, because not only are they shipwrecked, it's also cold and raining. And they're helping them out. And then, to make matters worse, one of them gets bit by a snake. So maybe we see someone who's in a bad situation, and then we see their situation go from bad to worse. And I think a lot of times, I know I've been guilty of this, of being like the people of Malta, what did Luke say? Unusual kindness. Sometimes we are unusually kind to people, and then we see their bad situation go from bad to worse. And the first thing that we think about, the first thing that comes to mind is, oh, they must have done something real bad. Whatever you're going through, like I'm gonna sit here, like I'm helped you, and I'm gonna sit by you. I'm gonna stick by for just a moment, make sure that you're okay. But I'm also judging you. You must have done something bad. Like you made it out of the last situation, and now like something even worse seems to happen. Like you lost your job, and now your car gets repossessed, or you got put out of your living situation, and now you lost your job. What did you do? What did you do? Like, you were surviving. You're surviving here on my couch, but you must have done something really bad, because these types of things don't happen to people who are doing good. If you were like us, if you were like me, then this wouldn't be happening to you. No, I'm by myself. Okay. Nobody's ever done that. Nobody has ever sought out and reached out to help someone and then also judged them on top of helping them. And if we're going to be witnesses, we need to be on the other side of this. We need to be the hero in these situations. We need to be careful and cautious not to judge people whom God has sent to us to help. We cannot judge people who God has sent to us to help. So it does not do any good. It does not do any good. And I'm gonna go ahead and say it. It does absolutely no good to believe that you are called to save babies, And the way to save babies is to help the mother who has an unwanted pregnancy, an unwanted, unplanned pregnancy. And her pregnancy was not planned, so she goes to Planned Parenthood. And because I want to save babies, and to save the baby, I need to help the mother, I'm going to harass the mother. That's going to do it. Let me harass this woman and judge her for her circumstance, and that will make it better. You see how that doesn't make any sense? None. Like, you see how that doesn't make any sense? Oh, okay. Here's another one. Here's another one, because in many churches in the realm of Christendom, there are big sins, there are little sins. The sins that we do, those are little sins. But then there are certain lifestyles that people live that we ascribe to be greater sin, right? Even though the only places in the Bible where it's mentioned, it's listed with a bunch of other things that we're guilty of, maybe even every single day. But we're going to pick on those sins. And so the way I'm going to help you, who seems to be confused about your preferences, is I'm not going to convert you to Christ. I'm going to I want to convert your identity so that it matches mine. No, not talking about Christ. I just want you to see people and experience attraction the way I do. No? Was that too far? Too much? Too soon? I know it's the second day of Pride Month. Is it too soon for me to call us out on the way that we in the church, particularly in these United States of America, how poorly we treat our brothers and sisters who belong to who identify themselves as being part of the LGBTQ plus community? Is it too soon in this month to talk about how we mistreat them and how we call ourselves helping people, but we actually are just judging them? Maybe it's too soon. So I'll move on. I need another example. We should not be like the people at Malta. Like, yes, it's good to help people, but we need to give people help that they need. We need to give people help that is useful. The first help was useful. It's cold, it's rainy, you're wet, you just washed up on shore at my beachfront property. And so what you need is warmth. What you need is heat. So I'm gonna help you, but then I'm also going to judge you. And then here's what else we need not do. Verse 5. Sorry, I keep getting ahead of myself. Verse 5. Then it doesn't say then. I made that up. Verse 5. He, Paul, however, shook off the creature into the fire and suffered no harm. So let's flip it and reverse it. Now we're back to seeing ourselves in Paul's sandals. Something bad happened. He wasn't even worried about the shipwreck, but then he gets bit by a snake. He's just trying to serve his travel companions by helping build the fire, even though he himself needs to be kept warm. And he gets some more sticks to put on the fire and gets bit by a snake. Now, my reaction typically, when things are already going poorly, and then it flips to worser. And yes, worser is a word. You know what worser is. You have to use words that don't exist sometimes to describe the circumstances you find yourself in. So things go from bad to worser. And my response typically is to maybe throw some things in the air dramatically, maybe a stack of paper. I don't have a stack of papers on my desk that are not bound by something, but, throw them in the air so all the papers float down, and lean my chair back all the way, and, maybe use some profane language to myself, nobody else around me, just to express my utter frustration. And then I dwell. not in the shadow of the Almighty. I dwell on my problem. I dwell on how it just got worse. I dwell on my imagination, my perception that things are only going to get worse from here. I can't recover from this. Like me, a snake bites my hand and it's dangling from my hand. The only thing that I can think about is everything in my life, because for me, I see my life flashing before my eyes. But what Paul does, he shakes it off and throws it into the fire. Yet again, I'm talking to myself. When things get worse, sometimes just shake it off. Like let's not make things worse in our minds. Let's not assume that the worst is going to happen. Let's not assume that the outcome that we're going to get is the worst possible outcome. Like, I don't know if you've ever been late on a car payment before, right? And there's always a first time. If you've never been late on a car payment, keep up the good work. If you have been late on a car payment, there's always the first time, because if you're late once, you're bound to be late again. It happens throughout life. But the first time it happens, like you don't know what's going to happen, and it's like, oh my goodness, I missed the payment. It was due yesterday, and they're going to come take my car. It's going to ruin my credit. I'm never going to be able to move into the place I want to move into. The job that I really want, they run credit. They're going to see that I missed my car payment. My car got repoed, and how am I even going to get to work? And I can't get hired at that place because they're going to run my credit and see the repossession, and I'm just going to be a bum on the streets, and nobody's going to want to be with me because I'm going to be a bum who doesn't have a car or a good job that that is beyond walking distance. And because I'm going to be by myself, then the family that I envision having for myself, well, that's not going to happen. Or I didn't want to have a family, but I did want to ride off into the sunset with somebody, and that's not going to happen. I'm going to be by myself, and I'm going to be all by myself and have to change my own depends because I'm going to lose control of my bowels at a certain point, and no one's going to be there for me because I was late on a car payment. Then come to find out you paid it the next day, and they hadn't even reported it to the credit bureaus, much less the fact that it takes you three late payments and another half of a month before they start sending a tow truck for you. Ask me how I know. Something can happen. And yes, is it possible that all those other things can happen? Sure it is. When Paul got bit by a snake, is it possible that the snake could have put venom in his bloodstream that would have caused him to die? Absolutely. Like that's a very real possibility. Paul's response was to shake it off. Literally, that's what it says. He shook it off. And I don't know how you shake. You might shimmy. I don't know what it is, but people are watching. We talked about that in a previous study in this series about how Paul and Silas responded in the prison. When the earthquake came and all that, they were in there, they were singing hymns and praying, praising God. The other prisoners were watching. As witnesses, when things happen to us, other people are watching to see how we are going to respond. And they may make their assumptions about us because of the situation that we're in, but they're looking to see how we respond. And Paul shakes it off. And so we ought to shake it when things happen, shake it off. No, not Taylor Swift, Mariah. You got to have the right song stuck in your head. So here's what happens next. Verse 6, they were waiting for him to swell up or suddenly fall down dead. I'm going to stop there. Now, again, we can be on either side of this thing where something's happening to us and others are waiting for things to get even worse. Like they were literally waiting for his demise. They were waiting for him to swell up or to just fall down and die. Like, thanks, appreciate the fire and your hospitality. I guess since you're looking for me to die. But again, let's put ourselves back on the other side. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of the people at Malta. They see what happens to him, and their belief is, first of all, they judge him for his situation, for his circumstance, not knowing that he chose to be there. And not only did Paul choose to be there, he predicted that the ship was going to sink and that they were going to be okay. And they ended up on the island. So they were judging him for something that he had chosen to be a part of. He had chosen for these things to happen. He didn't choose the storm, but he chose to be on that boat because there was something he was seeking to accomplish. And first they judge him, and now they are deciding an outcome. First they decide that his circumstance means something it does not necessarily mean, and then they were waiting for him to swell up or suddenly fall down dead. Now, see, this is the part where we call ourselves helping, right? We call ourselves helping, and then we stand back and we judge. Stand back and we judge. And now we're predicting further doom. That's just the first part of this verse. Let's keep going. But when they had waited a long time and saw no misfortune come to him, they changed their minds and said he was a god. Now, what in the I was against the war before I was for the war, before I was against it. What in the world of flip-flops is that? To judge him based on his circumstance, then to assume that only worse could happen, to wait, like, let's watch this, he gonna die. Watch how his hands swell up, watch. Now just keep watching, it's gonna swell up, it's gonna swell up. It's not swelling up, it's not swelling up, it's not swelling. He must be a god. Like, why can't I just be a person who's here and life is just lifing? Life will just life. And meaning does not have to be ascribed to everything that happens. Sometimes there's a meaning and we find out the meaning later, or we learn the lesson later. But sometimes things are just things. Sometimes things just happen because they happen. And so meaning doesn't have to be ascribed to everything. But these Maltans, either he's a murderer, now he's a god. It's like, this is Twitter. This is Twitter before Twitter is in the Bible, where there is no middle, there is no nuance. There's just murderer, God. You're one of the two, but you can't just be a man suffering misfortune. Why are we like that? Why does it have to be one extreme or the other? Why does it have to be, I'm going to be a millionaire? You're not, but I'm going to be a millionaire. But if I can't be a millionaire, then I'll probably be homeless. You can't just have a 2-bedroom apartment for way more than it should cost. You can't just have that. You can't just live in a home with a few people and all y'all saving money and your cars are paid off and all. It can't just be that. It has to be, I'm wealthy or I'm poor. It has to be, God, my God shall supply all of my needs according to his glorious riches. Or, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? It can't just be life in. Like, I have learned, I have found that sometimes all you have to do is go to sleep. And when you wake up the next day, the feeling that you had about the thing from yesterday is no longer there. The thing still happened, but it's not there. It's just a thing. It's just a thing that happened. Meaning doesn't have to be ascribed to everything, and we need to not be so flip-flop, wishy-washy, and just allow things sometimes, allow things to be, allow life to carry on, leave room for God to do something. Instead of deciding today, right now, that everything that I know, which is not very much in comparison to all there is to know, but everything I know means doom and gloom. Why can't it just be, okay, here's what I know, and there's more out there, so I'm just gonna hold on and see what the Lord gonna do with this. As witnesses, that should be our attitude, not one of doom and gloom, not one that ascribes a meaning. Ooh, that's happening to you. The Lord is not pleased with you. There's a sin that you need forgiveness for. What have you done? That's what Job's friends ran out on him. Job ain't do nothing. I'm like, you probably have sinned against God, and you need to repent and throw yourself before the Lord. You probably got greedy. One of Job's friends actually said, "You probably greedy." And Job's like, "I'm broke now. Like, how am I being greedy?" Let's not do that. But because this happened, we see what happens in these next few verses. Verse 7, now in the neighborhood of that place were lands belonging to the chief man of the island named Publius, who received us and entertained us hospitably for 3 days. It happened that the father of Publius lay sick with fever and dysentery, and Paul visited him and prayed, and putting his hands on him, healed him. Again, Paul is looking for opportunities to serve. Paul is looking for opportunities to serve. I'm here, they're being hospitable to me, which, again, on the other side of that should be our response, not the folks who are judging on the beach. They were judging on the beach next to a fire pit. The ruler who owned land brought them in, entertained them, took care of these people. It's Roman centurions, it is prisoners, who knows what they're guilty of. They assumed Paul was the murderer because he got bit by a snake, but it was probably some murderers mixed in there, and they just didn't know because they hadn't been bit by snakes. And then there's some of Paul's friends. We know Luke is there, and they're shown hospitality regardless. You here, you landed on our island, we show you hospitality. But Paul is looking for an opportunity to serve. Oh, he's sick, let me heal. Let me pray for him. He probably didn't say, let me go heal him. He said, I'll pray for him. But he prayed for him, and he laid hands on him, and he was made well. And because that happened, now, verse 9, and when this had taken place, the rest of the people on the island who had diseases also came and were cured. I've said this before, we've talked about this before. We have no idea how far our goodness, the good deeds that we do, not for the sake of doing good deeds, but because we serve the Lord and we are witnesses for Christ, we have no idea how far the thing that we do is going to go. The prayer that we prayed could result in healing for masses of people. The investment that we make into someone who is part of our community, or friend or family member, the small investment we make into what they're trying to do, what they're trying to get started, the small investment that we make could result in so many more people benefiting, so many more people coming alive, so many more people coming to Christ, having their lives changed forever. If Paul, this is kind of the butterfly effect, and we have no way of knowing. This is in hindsight. We can see that, just going back to where Paul said, nope, I want to go before Caesar. Y'all not about to play me like this. And I'm going to go to Rome. So yes, go ahead and put these chains on me, put me on a boat. I'm going to Rome. Because Paul made that decision, and they were on the ship, in the shipwrecks, but Paul knew, because he said, the ship's going to go down, we're going to be okay. The Lord told me to tell, we're going to be okay because I have somewhere to go. I still got stuff to do. We're going to be okay. And it falls. And then they've got the fire, and Paul helps to build the fire. There's a chance. I imagine I've got a pretty good idea, just because people are people and nothing about people has changed over the last 6,000 years of written history, is that people gonna people. And so when these Maltans judged Paul and were waiting for him to drop dead, and he didn't, and like, oh, he must be a god. Hey, let's go tell Publius. Like, he would love to be, he would love to entertain a god, have him come to his house, and be, got to tell people. No doubt that what they experienced, what they saw Paul, how they saw Paul respond to the snake, no doubt that they told somebody. And because of how Paul handled that situation, he was invited into Publius's home, had an opportunity to pray for Publius's father. His father was healed. Now all these people are healed because of how Paul responded to getting bit by a snake. All because of how I respond when things go from bad to worse. I have no idea how my response in this moment, my decision in this moment, my choice for today will have impact, not just on the rest of my life, but on the lives of others. And it said that the rest of the people on the island who had diseases also came and were cured. Now, what I'm about to say is purely speculation. This ain't in the Bible, it's just speculation. But what if whatever the other sick had on that island, and it's a small island, like, go look it up. What if it were a virus, an airborne virus, and eventually everyone was going to get it, and everyone was going to be unalived by this illness. And they never crashed there. And Paul never had that good response that caught people's attention. And he was never invited into the home and prayed for the sick man. And these people didn't get healed. Like, all the people on the island could end up dead. But there are Christian churches on the island of Malta today. Today. Who knows how Paul's short 3-month stay on that island transformed the future, which is now history, for that island and the people of that island. Who knows? As witnesses, we have to go through life that way. That I know God's got me, and who knows what, man. I'm just gonna do what is set before me. Some sticks need to be put on the fire. That's what I'm gonna do. The snake bites me on my hand. I'm gonna shake it off. Somebody needs prayer. I'm gonna pray. Just doing the thing, the right thing that's in front of us. Who knows how we can change the world? The whole world. I know sometimes it seems hard enough just to change our neighborhood or the district, the gerrymandered district that we live in. It may seem hard enough just to transform some of the folks in our group chat, because they need more of Jesus. Maybe they have Jesus, but they didn't get enough of him. And maybe when they got hands laid on them, the hand got taken off too soon, and they didn't get a full download of the Holy Spirit. Don't know, but who knows how just doing the thing in front of us, can change things forever. for somebody. And then they left. Paul and them left. They got on another ship and they left. And Paul never went back there again. Never went back there again. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe one of the churches on that island is named after Paul. All because of a shipwreck and a snake bite.